Hello and welcome to Literally Me, the Ryan Gosling Rewatch podcast. I'm your host, Dean's Beans, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Fluffy Duffy. Hello, Harlan.
You nailed that intro. I know you were worried about it, but you
Thank
did
you.
great.
I really struggled to remember what this podcast is called because we're only 5 episodes in. But I've got to say, it feels like I've recorded a lot more than 5 podcasts with you.
Well, funny you mentioned that because you have.
What?
All right, anyways, let's not get hooked on this.
So this is the podcast where every week we go through every week by week we'll go through every Ryan Gosling film from his very first film to his very last, but not exactly in that order. But today we are talking about his fifth film, which was released in 2002. I had something else really important to share with you, but it's just left my mind. The film we're talking about is called Murder by Numbers.
Yes, which, if you are familiar with the GIF option on iMessage, it's the one that where Ryan Gosling is sticking his tongue out with a red leather jacket.
I
So,
I didn't know that because I'm not familiar with GIF options on iMessage.
well, maybe you should do yourself some learning.
I should. I mean, yeah, we don't. We're not. That's interesting.
You and WhatsApp.
Yeah, we're a WhatsApp nation over here in the UK.
Doesn't make sense because you have an iPhone. Why would you use?
You are the only person I text. Genuinely, you are the only person I message.
Interesting. Well, I did know that,
Yeah,
but just as a concept that you have an iPhone, you don't use iMessage.
yeah. Yeah.
Like
I mean,
everybody uses iMessage as an iPhone in America.
interesting, but not that interesting. What's more interesting is some things I'm about to say about the film Murder by Numbers. So it was released in May 2002. I was trying to figure out which one the fifth month was. That I'm really bad at that.
Mm.
It's
Mine is 6, so I'm pretty
what
snappy with those.
I was about to say. I can do the latter end of the year. I can do like August to December, and I'm born in September, so I guess it makes sense.
Mm.
But funnily enough, you say that this is the last Ryan Gosling film that was released before either of us was born. So
Wow,
there's that. And while filming this film, he was 21, which is the age we both are.
that's
What an,
crazy.
what an amazing world we live in. I know we talked about this last week, Colin, but let's go back into it. What was your favorite film of 2002?
Spider-Man.
I think I said I agreed with you, but I'm just going to double check and look at my options. But I think you're right.
Both this movie and Spider-Man were in theaters at the same time.
Were they? I bet. How many people watched this instead of Spider Man? Do you think?
I don't know. I bet it was a close call.
I bet it. I bet it was a really close call. But it is funny you say that because this film made 56.7 million at the box office.
That's not bad for what I'm going to assume is like a $15 million budget.
It's funny enough you say that. I googled it just before we started, and according to Wikipedia, a very trusted source, this film has a budget of 50 million.
Wow. So it broke even, but not really because you
But
had
not,
plus this
yeah,
factor.
not really because of marketing costs. So
All
it
right,
did not
but
do that well.
before
But
we
sorry,
before we go any further talking about the fun facts of the film, should we give a brief plot synopsis?
yeah, go on. You give it to us.
All right, so the protagonist of this movie is Sandra Bullock's character of what's her name? What's her name?
Uh, I can find out.
Cassie.
Cass-
Um,
Cassie
she's a
Mayweather.
she's a homicide detective, and there was this murder in this town which was committed by Ryan Gosling's character of Richard and Michael Pitt's character of Justin. And Ryan Gosling's character and Richard and Justin, kind of like have this all planned out, and Justin's a criminal mastermind, but Richard is the one with the balls to do it. Um, and you kind of follow this game of cat and mouse as these cops try to uncover this murder.
They try
And
to
it's
detect.
it's a mystery thriller, so you're trying to figure things out along as the detectives
Yeah,
find more things.
yeah. But did you know this film is loosely based on a true story?
Really?
So there's these pair of murderers in the 20s called Leopold and Loeb. And they have this is the third film based, sorry, this is the fourth film based on these two. The first one being an Alfred Hitchcock film called Rope, and then there was a 1959 film called Compulsion, and there was a 1992 film called Swoon. And I think the interesting thing about those murders compared to this film, which kind of like leads into some of the subtext in this film, is that the two murderers were both men and they were both lovers.
Mm. There is definitely some of that subtext,
Yeah,
but
less. It's subtext and it's not.
yeah.
Also, Henry Bean, who people have been listening along would remember as the director of The Believer, did some uncredited script work on this film.
Interesting.
Mm. And I have one more fun fact for you.
Hit me.
After this film, Ryan Gosling and Sandra Bullock started dating
Yes, they did.
with
They were together for a good amount of time now.
it was a year or so, but I think it was like a 16-year age gap.
Hmm.
It,
Well,
it was like a DiCaprio age gap, just Ryan Gosling was the under
right.
25.
It is Sandra Bullock though, so all
So,
right. Now
yeah.
I did something that I typically frown upon when I check out movies I haven't seen. And
Mhm.
before I watched this movie, I checked out the Rotten Tomatoes score.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh boy, I'm in
Mhm.
for a ride. Because currently it says I don't think it's going to be changing anytime soon, but it stands at a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And then a 49 with audiences.
Do you agree with that score? A
No,
30.
I don't
I
I
don't
don't
either.
I don't think this is a great film. Like I wouldn't put it as very I think it's a fine film,
Yeah,
but I yeah, 30% on Rotten Tomatoes is not that far off, like Holmes and Watson had.
right. And like 30%, I don't think this movie was bad by any, like it was fine. Like what you said, like it was predictable. You could see the character motivations coming a mile away, but I feel like everybody, I thought that like the performances were good.
Yeah.
The script was good. Like everything was just like,
It's just fine. And I'll take that back. Holmes and Watson got a 10%. But this film is a similar score to Space Jam: A New Legacy, a film that I think is just as bad. Um, yeah, like I think everything is fine. I have problems, and obviously we're going to talk about this stuff more. But like, I think basically, I've said that I said this about another film we talked about. I can't remember which one it was, but from Harlan's, I think it was The Believer. From Harlan's description of this film earlier on, when he said, "Oh, it's just about these two guys that do a murder and the police that track them down in this game of cat of mouse." If you hear that idea, that plot, and you go, "Oh, that sounds like it's a film for me. That's quite interesting," then I think you'll enjoy this film. And if you hear that plot and you're like, "Oh, that sounds a bit generic," then I wouldn't like recommend it.
yeah. No, I agree. It definitely like quite literally is nothing that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, and it's the classic thing of, I mean, the question you could ask is like, oh, is this like everything's been like this has been done to the death since this film? But honestly, I think this film came out in the height of this kind of thing being done to death.
Yeah. Because you have also like what are some like seven? Um, that's the only one I can think of right now.
Yeah,
But
I was thinking more that just every single TV show in
mm,
2010 is identical to this.
yeah, I get that.
And like, that doesn't make the film worse, but it does make it a bit like, yep, yeah, yeah. Like, it's nothing here. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, surprised me. One thing surprised me. I'll take that back, but I'm gonna get to this point because I have questions about it.
Okay. Um, did we cover our general thoughts, or are we good to go
Yeah,
on?
do you have anything else to add on your general opinion on this film?
I don't know. I feel like I would, again, looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score, I was like, this one's gonna be bad. And like towards the halfway point, I was like, wow, this movie has to like fall apart at
Yeah.
the end. And it didn't. I don't think the ending completely worked, in my opinion,
Uh-huh.
but there was nothing in this movie where I was like, this is bad.
I agree. I think its worst crime is that it's dull.
Yeah. Which to be fair, like for Rotten Tomatoes, like if every critic that said thought dull gave it a rotten, it would be at a
Yeah.
0. But
Yeah.
you know, like
I that's the
so
thing. It's what we said about the slaughter rule last week, which got a 74%. And I would imagine that's everyone going, yeah, this film is fine. And I think the scores of these two films should probably be flipped, but
I
uh,
agree.
yeah. Um, yeah, so what were your thoughts on Ryan Gosling? I think this is an interesting role, a bit more for him to chew on than we've seen in most of the other stuff he's been in up to this point.
Yeah, I think definitely this is the most charismatic we've seen Ryan
Yeah,
Gosling.
yeah, charismatic in a weird kind of unsettling way.
But I do think that this role of his is the closest we've got to what he is known to be
Yeah, definitely.
now.
Like you kind of get this sort of character in a lot of his other stuff.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I think he does well. I think he's charming. I think that like he shows a good range of emotion here because like in The Believer, I think it's a very good performance in that. But it's like, he shows like two, three emotions. Like here, like he has a lot of opportunity to show a lot of different stuff. And I think there's a lot more going on with this character and like the subtext and his like mental state and that sort of thing. And I think that makes it much more interesting too.
I do think there are some like so as I mentioned earlier, like his role in the duo of the two murders is that like he's the one who takes action.
Yeah, he's
And
yeah, he wants to do this murder. He's like itching to do something, but he doesn't have the brains to pull it off by himself.
from that you kind of think, oh well, he must be some sort of psychopath.
Yeah,
But when the first murder we see him kind of crying. And
yeah,
I thought that was interesting, and it made that character that seemed relatively two-dimensional some 3D aspects.
yeah. Something I read online while watching this film was that he threw up during the murder scenes.
Ryan
Um,
Gosling?
Ryan Gosling threw up during the murder scenes, and I thought that was interesting because you can tell like he is like it is a really good performance there from him where he's proper
Yeah.
distressed by it. Yeah,
Um,
and I do really think they do a good job of um like implying this romance between the two murderers. Like I don't know if it should have been more obvious or
well, a
like
romance,
not
I
romance.
feel like it's a
But
little general. Like it's definitely Ryan Gosling's character has a crush on the
yes,
character of Justin,
yes.
but Justin doesn't feel that same way. So there's an interesting dynamic between the two.
Yeah, and I think his kind of view on things and what I really like about Ryan Gosling in this film is the scenes where he like meets Sandra Bullock. It's like the first time he meets her and he's like kind of being accused of this murder and he's like, "Oh, I couldn't have done this because this and this and this." He's like playing dumb and I think those are really interesting scenes and I think that's when he does seem really charismatic, although the audience pretty much knows that, he's a murderer.
Right.
Yeah. So pretty good. What do you think of like
Bring me
Sandra
light
Bullock
on.
and others in this?
I think Sandra Bullock gave a really good performance.
Yeah,
Not really, like she was good. Like she
she
did
did.
exactly what she needed to do. I thought we'll get into the plot, but there was like she has a history of um I spoiler alert, I guess.
For the yeah,
Spoiler alert for the movie. So if you want to watch it and come back. But her character of Cassie was how do I she was nearly murdered.
Yes.
And so you have like throughout the entire movie, she's battling that and overcoming that event. And
Yeah.
that, but
And it
I don't know if it works that well.
no, and there's this whole thing of like, her being like self-destructive and like pushing people away and that sort of thing. And I guess this is plot thoughts, but I'll say it now. It like this might sound like a weird analogy, but it reminds me of TV shows like The Flash, you know, where you're watching
Okay.
it and you're like, oh, this is cool. And then they switch to like 10 minutes of like soap opera television. And you just have to
Yeah.
follow this character going through like a normal day struggle. And you're like, okay, can we get back to the superhero stuff now? And that's kind of what I felt during these scenes. Like, I thought it was an interesting concept, but I don't think the film needed it.
And I do like her role in this. I th- I don't know why it came to mind, but the role of um Clarice in Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
We with her with and Hannibal Lecter, we get this whole backstory of her with the lambs and going out lost, whatever, whatever. Have you seen Silence of the Lambs?
Yes.
And that works because it's this tense scene in between the antagonist and protagonist, and
Yeah.
the antagonist trying to manipulate the protagonist. But in this one, like it's literally like you said, like instead of watching The Flash, we're stuck with Cisco and
Yeah.
Killer Frost.
Yeah.
But g- going off of Sandra Bullock for a sec, have you said everything you need to say about Sandra Bullock?
Yeah. I think so.
We, I think the character of Justin, there's no polite way to say this. His character just kind of annoyed me a little bit.
Really.
He was fine.
Yeah, but like
I,
I don't think he's supposed to be a likable character. Was it like was
that's
it that
true.
annoyed you?
But he was fine. I think he definitely was, you know,
Yeah.
I would argue there's three primary characters in
Mhm.
this movie, and that's Ryan Gosling, that's Richard, Justin, and Cassie, and he's definitely the weakest. Justin.
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you mean, but I think it is kind of the idea that he's the uncharming one and Ryan Gosling is all cool. But I think like there's this whole subplot of him like starting a relationship with this fellow student. And I think that was another bit of the film where like I like that concept of it because it does tie into the
Hmm.
plot and this relationship between the two murderers. But I don't think I don't think it's his fault. I think the script kind of moved through that quite fast when they could have spent
Yeah,
more time of it and less time because the stuff in this film I didn't like. We are kind of in plot thoughts now,
yeah,
but
we're in plot
we, we
thoughts.
we can jump in between. I think the stuff that I didn't like was this whole thing like every detective TV show ever where like oh she has to go rogue and she can't do it by the book because the captain is like hey stop looking into this it's over we're sticking up for the rich guy we can't do it and then she has to go off and do it on her own and I think that's literally every single thing in this genre I've ever watched.
Yeah.
It's like every Mission Impossible film apart from Mission Impossible 2 Ethan Hunt goes rogue,
Oh, I haven't seen Mission Impossible 2. I've
have you not?
like
It's the worst
stayed
one.
away.
It's the
Yeah.
worst. It's not. Okay, it's pretty bad. There's a bit where like he jumps off a motorbike and the other guy jumps off a motorbike and they throw their motorbikes at each other, and
Awesome.
that's pretty much what this whole film is. Have you seen the bit of the him getting the message?
No.
He gets the mission on a pair of Ray Bans, like it plays on the Ray
Okay.
Bans, and then he takes the Ray Bans off, throw them behind him, and obviously they explode because the message explodes.
Right. Is it
It's
is
like
like a cool guys don't look at explosions moment?
oh, it is the most like 2000s. Like, is yeah,
Speaking of 2000s, the music in this movie,
yeah.
fantastic.
I
Whenever I
really,
watch like a low budget 2000s movie, you bet you get that crazy synth sort of vibe and it's
Yeah.
great.
I really had no idea which direction you were taking with that. It reminds me, it really, so this is what I think. To me, it sounds like something Jesse Pinkman would be listening to.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I
Um,
really had no idea which direction you were going to swerve with that.
so are you playing the Rubik's Cube?
No,
I'm sorry, a speed cube?
no.
Show it. Show it. Show it.
I'm
There
about to
we
solve it.
go. Are you really?
Oh,
Sorry, audio listeners.
oh. Oh, you made me miss it. Oh, no, don't.
Ah,
No.
what? Good
It's very
job.
difficult to do while looking at me here instead of looking at the cube. Anyway, it was sitting on my side unsolved, and I was getting very upset by it.
Um, I just heard the clickety clackety. I'm like, there's only one thing that could be. Did you? I had a Rubik's Cube phase back in middle school. I had a good like couple months where I just was carrying that around school all
But
day.
no, I went through that phase probably around the same time as you do. What happened today? This is extraneous detail. So I like completely have reorganized my room because I'm moving out of here soon. So I was like throwing a bunch of stuff away, and I found the Rubik's cube, and I just left it on my side. And then I was sitting here, and as I was sitting, I was looking at it again. Nothing's unsolved, so I just
Wait, do you remember how to solve it from middle school?
I've done it since.
Okay, because I haven't.
Yeah, yeah.
Once I forgot how to, I never did it again.
I think about like once every 2 years, I do reteach myself, and then I'll do it for like a day, and then I'm like, okay. But at this point, it is mostly muscle memory.
Anyways, back to the plot.
I couldn't explain how to solve it. My hands know. Anyway,
Um,
back to murder by night. Why is okay? Okay, can I completely change the subject?
are you are you changing the subject of the subject we changed?
I want to. I've got a question about this film. I want to ask you.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Why is it called Murder by Numbers?
Well, I think it like by the number, sort of like down to
Okay,
every thing.
yeah, that's quite. Yeah, that's a very quick and very good analysis. I think every film we've talked about so far has had a very straightforward name, other than this.
But so the plot, I think that one of the biggest problems I had, not the biggest problems, but one thing I wasn't a big fan of was the ending.
Mm-hmm.
Because so at the
Yes,
end,
yes, I do 100% agree.
there's a big standoff between the Sandra Bullock and Ryan Gosling character. The Ryan Gosling character dies. He falls off a cliff. But before he does, he kind of goes psychotic
Yeah,
and he starts like licking Sandra Bullock's face and going like, ah!
yeah,
And so then there's that. And then the edge, because they're on like a patio, the patio breaks. Sandra Bullock's character is about to also fall off the cliff.
yeah.
And Justin comes in and he's like, no, I'll save you with this pointless piece of wood. He saves her. And then, big twist, it wasn't Ryan Gosling's character who killed the woman. It was Justin all along.
I don't mind that part of it. I think, go
It, that was fine. It was like, whatever. But it doesn't make sense. Why did Ryan Gosling's character turn psychotic if he was
no.
too
Oh yeah, that's true.
like I can't. He was crying both times, or at
Yeah.
least had tears in his eyes both times, which wouldn't make sense if he's actually like I'm gonna lick her face. You know what I
what,
mean?
what I didn't like about the ending of this film is it. I keep coming up with really weird analogies, but I've got another one for you.
Here we
This
go.
is another super
They've been
analogy.
working. They've been working.
This feels like a Disney Plus Marvel finale, It's like WandaVision, where they have all this interesting character drama and mystery, and then they're like, oh, how do we write this final bit? Oh, let's just have a big fight. And then that's just
Okay. Although I agree with you, there could have been better ways to end it.
yes.
Would you? Why would like the movie has followed the most vanilla,
No,
typical way
but
to
I
follow
think
it?
I think the fact that that he literally falls off a cliff is just so over dramatic, you know?
It, and like I'm not gonna like knock the film because it was 2002, but the effects are goofy.
Yes, yes. But he just falls off a cliff. What I didn't say earlier on, in case you're interested, I had a look for a film this year that got as close to this film in the box office, and it was Night Swim. Got a very similar box office result.
Yeah, but how much did Night Swim cost to make?
Oh, oh, I was about to say loads, but I'm like, maybe it was kind of cheap.
15 million. So
Oh,
this Night Swim made more than
yeah. Have you? Did you
Murder
watch
by
Night Swim?
Numbers. What do you say?
You watch it?
No.
It's
Did you?
Yeah, it was pretty bad, but it's like this film where they were like, "Hey, let's do a horror film about a swimming pool," and then they got every cliche they could possibly fit into that damn swimming pool. Anyway, um, I just think it was a bit too action movie at the end, specifically because of the cliff. You know,
Yeah.
I
I
I,
would say
I
tonally it doesn't match, but like I didn't like I would when it happened, I'm like I wasn't struck by it.
Yeah, that's why I started laughing when you said he fell off a cliff, because when you just said it so plainly, it sounds so funny in like this very serious, like cop procedural. So, and then he fell off a cliff. I what the
You
scene
know
I
how it
do like, I
goes.
do like the scene just before where like they're holding guns to each other because they're like, oh no, they're pointing guns at themselves because they're like, oh, we've been caught, we've got to both kill ourselves. But it turns out Ryan Gosling didn't load his gun, and I was like, this is an interesting scene. And then Sandra Bullock shows up, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm amazed we haven't talked about this yet. It is the weirdest moment of any Ryan Gosling film we've watched so far.
Okay.
What I'm about to say. I think
No.
you might have even forgotten about this because it like does nothing. Okay. There is a scene in this film where Sandra Bullock gets attacked by a monkey,
Oh, that's right. A
and then
baboon.
she goes to hospital, and then it's never mentioned again.
Well, okay. To be fair, it was kind of a oh, come on. What's the word? What's the movie term? Gun.
Chekhov's gun.
It was kind of a Chekhov's gun
Yeah.
because early in the film they planted a baboon hair on the thing. So I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense. But you'd think a wild baboon would be a little bit more of a talking point
It's such a road. So
afterwards.
so basically what happens, if you haven't seen the film, is Sandra Bullock's doing some investigating. She walks into this room and gets jumped by a baboon who just starts like beating her up. And then she doesn't really fight back. The baboon.
But where she finds the baboon is like the garage of the primary suspect of the
Yes.
murder, which is
Yeah.
neither Ryan Gosling or the character of Justin.
Yeah. And then the baboon stops attacking her, like sits over on like a cupboard and just looks at her with blood in its mouth. Do we know where this baboon where what like how she was found, by the way?
How do you mean?
Like, did she
Where
like
the
take
baboon
herself?
came from?
No, did she take herself to the hospital? Or
Well, I mean, a ruckus was made, and then people came into the garage
oh
and
yeah,
like
that's
wrapped
right.
her up and
Yes, yeah, yeah. And then she went to hospital. She woke up and the detective partner was there. And here's another cliche for you. She was like, oh, how long has he been sitting here for? And then she gets dressed, goes to another crime scene or whatever. And it's just not mentioned again. It's literally baboon scene, hospital scene. That's it.
yeah. And I
Like
think like
mental.
it doesn't make much sense. Maybe like the only reason is to like develop the relationship between the detective and the detective's partner, which is a really strange part of the
Well,
movie.
it's the other thing is like they're trying to. I think they needed at this part of the film a reason for her to like be out of action for a little bit so he can take over and he can figure out, oh, this
Mm.
guy did it, blah, blah, blah. But I would love to be in the writer's room when they were like, okay, we need her to be out of action for like a day. And then someone goes, what if she was attacked by a baboon? And they go, okay, I love it. But let's just put something about baboon hairs earlier on in the film.
Like one of like the writers had like a cousin who had a pet monkey that they wanted to
Yes.
use in a movie, and they've tried to use it on several different scripts prior. And they're like, "This is my opportunity."
It just makes no sense. It really made me laugh. Should we get into this relationship between the two cops?
Yeah. So Sandra Bullock's character, the detective, like nobody wants to work with her.
Mhm.
She's the hyena.
She's a
Or
baboon.
yeah. Um, and so there's this new detective, and while the detective and the new detective like partner are at Sandra Bullock's house, Sandra Bullock makes a move. The partner's a little bit like, "Hey, I don't know if I should do this," but then they do. They hook up, but then in the middle of the night, Sandra Bullock's character is like, "Hey, you have to leave now, even though you don't really have to, but I want you to leave."
Mhm.
And then he does, and then just kind of like this on again, off again. No, then it never happens again, does it?
No, she hits on him again, and he's like, "Hey, I don't want just like, you know." He's like, "I want to be respected," and he's like, "Yeah, I respect you as a person," and then starts laughing.
But it's just weird, and I don't know if it like I get it. It's important for the character of Sandra Bullock to have that weird sort of, uh,
Yeah, I
but
think
I
there's
don't know.
better
I don't know if it
ways.
works how they
I think there's
wanted it
better
to.
ways to show she's the damaged person.
Yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, I think that a weirder part of this film is when like Ryan Gosling tries to make a move on her.
that I thought the movie, considering the last movie we watched, also kind of crossed that line a little bit. I
Yeah,
was kind of expecting there to be something with that, especially considering like Sandra Bullock and Ryan Gosling dated after this.
yeah,
Um, but that was weird. But like the movie kind of handled it with like a level of decency. Like Sandra Bullock's character, there was not even a moment of like, oh, maybe it was.
yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say?
No, you're right. There's she quickly shuts it down.
Yeah,
Yeah. What do you think of the direction in this film?
I thought it was fine, uninspired. Like it was,
Like,
there was nothing new.
there's nothing bad about it.
No,
It's it is like it is just like a cop procedural.
like if this, you could cut what, an hour out of this, and it could be a pretty good episode of Criminal Minds. You
Yeah.
know, like that's really all it is.
Very expensive, solid episode of Criminal
Yeah,
Minds.
why was it so? I bet
I,
because Sandra Bullock was coming off of Miss
yeah,
Congeniality.
I was about to say maybe she just got paid a lot. Like I don't even think anyone else here would have been paid that much.
No,
Even the girls,
I
yeah.
mean the friend from Footloose is in it.
I don't.
You-
I think the fact that you don't know his name is a pretty good indicator that he's not, calling in the big bucks.
Yeah. Um. Let's can is there documentation of this? How much did Sandra Bullock get paid in
It's a safe bet
murder?
because I don't think there's no big stunts really here other than maybe it cost them 40 million to have baboon
She got
trade,
paid, according to sportskedia.com, she got paid $15 million.
which is the entire budget of Night Swim.
Yeah.
And how much is Kurt Russell bringing in? Not that much. Anyway, he's the only actor I remember from Night Swim.
He was in, I don't know.
No, he's the dad. He's the main guy in Night Swim, and
Oh,
he's good. He's a charismatic guy. He's a
I
guy
like, you know, Sky High.
sky
All
high.
right.
The Godzilla TV show. You know,
I never watched that. Is it good?
I don't think it's for you.
What is that supposed to mean?
That sounded so backhanded, didn't it?
What do you mean it's not for me? I like the Godzilla movies.
It's quite intellectual. No, it's a bit like I don't even know if I like it, but I don't think I like it. But just every like 2 episodes, Godzilla showed up and did something really cool, and I was like, "Yeah,
Mm.
I'm back on board." No, it's interesting. It's interesting. Like I think what I would
We're
say,
talking about Monarch, right?
yes, Monarch Legacy of Monsters. I would say because they've confirmed they're making a season 2. If season 2 is getting better reviews than season 1, I would check it out. because it's the kind of thing that I'd be like, oh yeah, definitely watch this because it gets better. It's one of them.
Hmm.
If it gets better, I
If it
don't know
gets
what I'm
better.
trying to say. It's interesting.
No, no, I get what you're saying.
It's
You
interesting.
wouldn't recommend it, but
Yeah.
all right. So the directing is pretty uninspired, but now I think let's get into the wild card because I think it should be interesting to talk about.
Uh-huh.
Quick, it's a wild card. Every Ryan Gosling movie, we choose a different one that the movie sort of more or less specializes in.
Yeah, like the genre.
Um,
Yeah.
and so today the wild card is mystery.
Yeah. An interesting thing about this film, here's another analogy. It's kind of like glass onion because about maybe like an hour 15 into the film, they figure out who the murderers are, but they just have the last 45 minutes to try and, prove it.
Mhm.
And I think I don't know how I feel about it actually, because when it got to the point where they're like, oh, these guys are the killers. During the interrogation scene, I paused it to go to the loo. And when I paused it, I was like, oh my, there's half an hour left of this film. I thought it was a lot less. How is there still half an hour left of this? But
Yeah.
also, I do like the concept of, like in practice, I like this concept of, oh, we've solved the murder, but we still need to prove it. Because I think a lot of things can brush over that.
And I do like I think that works because it's interesting seeing the dynamic between Richard and Justin change as they
Yeah,
sort
I,
of
I, I
panic in the
think it
different
is the
ways.
most interesting way to explore that. You're right.
Um, and there I think there are like a decent amount of twists in this movie.
Yeah.
Um, some work better than others.
Mm-hmm. Once
And
again,
although I do think the pacing of this movie isn't great,
yeah.
I the mystery kept me interested.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you. I think it's interesting because like throughout the entire film, you know who did the murders. Like they tell you that at the start, and it's just you watching the detectives come to the same conclusion. But the mystery is how they did it and how they got away with it and why they did it, I guess, as well, and who did it out of the two of them. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that made it more interesting as well. Although I don't think I fully followed all of the little minutia of oh, they did this, this, and this, and now I'm going here.
Yeah.
It's fine, it's fine.
It was fine. It wasn't like I think one of my favorite mystery films is Prisoners
Mm-hmm.
because as the movie tries to go along, you don't know what happened and you're trying to piece it together.
Yeah.
And this movie kind of takes it from you and you have to which I mean, it doesn't take it from you. From the moment the movie begins, it kind of sets it up for you. And that's the point. Um,
Yeah.
but there wasn't anything where I was surprised or proud of myself for catching on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it was
I
just kind
think
of
the things that were twists were relatively inconsequential, where you were never
yeah.
like, oh my, I can't believe, here's a question for you. Speaking of our favorite mystery films, I've already mentioned the sequel to my favorite mystery film. My favorite mystery film, Knives Out. I know you're a big fan as well.
Hmm.
Um, if Knives Out 3 had pretty much the same mystery as this, just like with a 10 times more charismatic cast, would you be disappointed?
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's
because
like,
every murder that's come out from the
yeah,
Knives Out movies, there has been a twist, or it didn't happen the way, or it happened a completely different way of how you thought it did.
yeah,
And there's some sort of when the murder is revealed at the end, it's like a victory. It's like you know what I mean? Like cathartic
yeah,
almost.
yeah,
But for this, it wasn't. It was just like, ah, she got him. That's the end.
yeah. Speaking of which, it was quite popular actually. But if you haven't checked out, we planned a sequel to Knives Out 2, and they've just started announcing the cast, and none of our cast choices are in it yet. So clearly, he didn't. Ryan didn't listen to our advice.
Or he did, and he was like, no, I gotta save this for the fourth one.
Pretty good cast though. I think like Ryan Gosling. No, what? This is Ryan Gosling. Jeremy Renner.
Yeah, I
I
like
like
him.
Jeremy Renner as a choice.
It would be funny if they end up doing the because our idea was like they're stuck in like a lot, like
Yeah,
winter lodge, right?
yeah, yeah.
It would be funny if Ryan Gosling's character meets a fate similar to the one he almost met a couple
Jeremy
years
Renner.
ago. What did I say?
Ryan Gosling. I think the thing that confused me is I said Ryan Johnson, and Ryan Johnson sounds similar to Ryan Gosling. Anyway, the funny thing about the Jeremy Renner thing is that Jeremy Renner is mentioned in Knives Out, sorry, in Glass Onion, because they're like, oh, Jeremy Renner branded hot sauce.
That's right.
So is if Jeremy Renner is playing himself, maybe Wake Up Dead Man is Benoit Blanc trying to solve the mystery of who hit Jeremy Renner with a snowplow or whatever it was.
Genius. You're on to you're
This
cooking.
movie's writing itself. I think everyone looked at this and they were like, "Oh yeah, Andrew Scott is the murderer." Which I'm like, I can see that because also in all the Knives Out films, the murderer is the most obvious person. Anyway, um, oh, just better films than this film. Murder by
Yeah,
Numbers. Anything else to talk about?
I don't think so. Should we
No.
give it our
I,
each 10 out of
the
10?
thing sorry, just to jump back to plot, is the part of this film I liked, and I did say this, but I wish they spent more time on was the whole relationship between like there's this girl that is it Justin
Yeah.
gets with, and then Ryan Gosling's character is spying on her and gets all jealous, and then he hooks up with her, and then shows his friend a video of it, and then and then they fall out, and then she goes to the police. And I think something that could have improved this plot a lot is if you actually have her in the film after she confesses to the cops. Oh no, she's got that one scene, I guess, actually, but
Yeah, but I agree. She could have been used better
I
in
think
this
it's an
film.
interesting idea. I just wish it was explored more.
Yeah.
Anyway, Harlan, what would you give this film out of 10?
I would give it a solid like 6.5, I think.
I was gonna say 5.5, so I'm gonna stick with that.
All right. What does that bring us to? Like
Um,
together.
that is 11. No,
Not
12.
bad. 11 out of 20.
That's
12.
12 out of 20, which I think, you know. What would you rate Ryan Gosling out of this? Just for some context, his best performance currently is The Believer with an 8, and his worst is oh no, sorry, his best is The Fall Guy with an 8.5, but his worst is Remember the Titans with a 5.
I'm feeling like this also floats around a 6.5.
I would I would personally try and push it to a 7. We gave him a 6.5 in the slaughter rule, and I think he's definitely
Okay.
doing
Yeah,
this.
let's give him a 7.
Yeah, okay. So and for the last few weeks I've asked this question. I feel like I don't it's not even worth asking. But in this film, is he literally you?
He is not literally me
No,
in this
he's not.
film.
One of these weeks we'll get
One of
it.
these weeks.
We said yes for the Fall Guy, but once again, no. Next week, we will be talking about the United States of Leland, a film I'm excited to see, despite not knowing that much about it. Have you seen it before?
The United States. No.
United States of Leland. I'm looking, to be honest, I don't know anything about this film. I just really like its name, and I like Ryan Gosling's haircut that I see in this film.
I don't even want. I have to rent this. Dang it.
Did you have to rent this film?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. He's another murderer in this film. Wow, they just keep on coming.
One after
So
another.
if you want to watch United States of Leland um, during the next week before the next episode comes out, then feel free. You'll be able to understand a lot more what we're talking about. And if not, we'll do a great job explaining the film anyway, just like we did this week.
As always.
As always, thank you for listening. Ryan Gosling, if you are listening, please reply to my Instagram DMs. You're always welcome on a guest on this
See, what's
podcast.
weird is he doesn't even have Instagram. So who are you messaging?
Oh, don't you worry about that. Sandra Bullock being like, please, can you give me Ryan Gosling's number?
It's everybody. Like Ava Mendes. Eva Mendes has like thousands of messages on
yeah,
Instagram.
yeah. So Ryan, as I was saying, if you want to come on this podcast as a guest and we don't already have a guest planned for that week, then you're more than welcome to come on.
Well, if we can make time. I don't know. We're kind of busy.
If our schedule works and we don't already have a guest and you have time to watch the film we're talking about, because you're not allowed on if you don't rewatch the film beforehand.
Yeah, those
I
are the
don't
rules.
care if you were in it. Okay, Ryan? This guy, seriously. Okay, he's just being so rude, ignoring all my Facebook friend requests. Thank you for listening. Adios, and we'll see you next week. Bye.